All right, this is the Book of Esther, Part 3. Um, I've been really enjoying doing this study. I'm pretty sure most of you probably have already read the story or have already read ahead, but it's good to see. And I thought about this. There are two women who have books in the Bible, and that's Esther and Ruth. Both very prominent in helping to solidify the stance of the Jewish nation. Ruth being in the bloodline of Jesus Christ, and Esther, who has, as we'll see, has helped to uh, save the nation of Israel. So I thank God that, you know, we take for granted so many times that when you read the Word of God, everything is male centered, but God is using everyone, and He's utilized women in such great capacities that a lot of times we don't read about them. We don't, I think, honor them as we should. Um, we wouldn't be here without a woman, plain and simple. Um, and so I thank God for all that He continues to do with us as a people. Um, to God, we are all one. Uh, when He created Adam, He created him a genius. So when He created Eve out of Adam, she had to be a genius as well. He did not create woman to be lower, but to be a helper, uh, to be um, as much a part of life as anything else and everything else. So I thank God for these two, especially these two books. I've done a Bible study on Ruth, and that was I enjoyed that. So now we're doing Esther. So we're going to continue. We're going to go and see where this takes us. So let's do a quick review. This is actually chapter 2. I meant to change that and I didn't, so I apologize. Searching for a new queen. We read about the king's anger that was subsided once he remembered Queen Vashti's refusal, and he remembered the decree that he made to banish her to pick a new queen. And this subsided once he actually sobered up from a 6-month, 7-day party. I can't even imagine being in that much of a throw of a party and a celebration for that long. Uh, to me, it would become boring after a while because it's the same thing. But if you're inebriated for that long, you're number one, your health ain't gonna be that good. At least now, nobody can stay in that state for that length of time without uh, coming to a place where there is some sobriety, there's some clearness of thought before you go back into round 2, 3, 4, and on down the line for 6 months. So once this was all over, he had to, come to himself, and he remembered, this decree that he made because the queen had refused. So the king, as always, that he does confide in those who he has as princes and leaders over specific provinces who know the law and the writings to help him make certain suggestions, especially when he's not in the right mind and right frame. So the king's servants made a suggestion that he select beautiful young virgins to be brought to the king. Gather them into the women's quarters under the custody of Haggai, the king's eunuch. That beautiful preparations be given them or set them up, give them all that they need to make themselves beautiful and prepared to go into the king. Let the young women who please the king be the new queen. So now we dealt with also Mordecai and Esther. Mordecai was the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. So he was of the tribe of Benjamin. Kish had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon when they were taken captive. So we had read earlier in our teaching that there were those Jews that were, the whole nation had gone into captivity in Babylon, but once they were set free, there were some that returned back to Jerusalem, but there were some that stayed in Persia. Kish had been one who had been held captive by Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, but we see that Mordecai, being of that line, was one who part of his family did not go back to Jerusalem. They stayed and continued to raise their children and their families in the Persian Empire. Hadassah, or Esther, was Mordecai's cousin. She was lovely and she was beautiful. Her father and her mother had died. Mordecai took her in as his own daughter to help raise her. So Esther was among those women who were brought into the kingdom, have been gathered up. We learned in our last lesson that we're talking about a realm that went from India to Ethiopia, a rather large area of the Middle East. So you're looking at all those 120 provinces. It took time, well over a year, to gather them up. And then once you gathered these women up, they had to go through 6 months of preparation once they had been singled out. I'm sure that there was a vetting process. Gathered up all these women, and this one's good, this one's bad, this one's okay. We'll take this one, we'll send that one back. And they gathered them up and they put them into the king's first harem or harem, and they had to go through all these treatments that took actually 6 months before they even went to the king. So Esther was one who was there. Many young women were gathered to Shushan, the citadel, to the care of Haggai, the custodian of the women. Esther was one of them. And Esther pleased Haggai, who was the overseer of the women in the first harem, or the first place where the women were first gathered together. Pardon me. And she obtained favor with him. Of all the women that were there, she is one who stood out the most. We talked about this last week, that I do believe that because she was a Jew, being of the household of the children of Israel, she had she had God's favor, and she was part of God's plan. So yes, she would have stood out more. She would have become one who garnered attention. And so because this custodian saw things in her that was different than everyone else, he took more time with her and preparing her. He treated her kindly. He gave her specific beauty preparations. He gave her a special menu for her to eat. She had different foods that was different from all the other women. And they also gave her 7 choice handmaids. So she was not only on her own, she also had maidservants that would attend to her. And he moved her and her maidservants to the best place. So she wasn't just, lumped in like with everyone else. She had her own place that was specific, and it was better than any other accommodations that any of the other women had. And so it was a setup. You could tell that she was really one who was blessed and part of it. But Esther was housing a secret. She did not reveal her nationality, her family background. Mordecai tells Esther, do not reveal this information that you are Jewish. Mordecai kept careful watch over her. He would walk in front of the women's quarters and always wanted to know about how she was doing, what's her welfare, is she okay? You know, this is my daughter, you know, and I want to make sure that I know she's been taken, but I want to make sure that she's okay. So give me reports, let me know, you know. So that's what it was. But she did not tell who she belonged to or her nationality. So it was her time to come before the king. But all the women had to come before. Each young woman's turn came to go into the king. When you talk about going into the king, she had completed 12 months preparation, 6 months of oil of myrrh, and 6 months of special perfumes and ointments. When prepared, she was given whatever she desired to take with her from the women's quarters to the king's palace. And she would have a night with the king. In the evening, she went into the king's bedroom. In the morning, she returned to the second house of the women. So each woman, she had a chance to go into the king. She went from the first house, she went to the king. They slept together. The next morning, she left. She goes into the second house, or the second harem or harem, to the custody of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch who kept the concubines. She would not go into the king again unless the king delighted in her and called her by her name. So she couldn't just, or he just couldn't say, you know, hey, bring me the one that was here last Tuesday, Wednesday, or whatever. You know, he knew their names. The eunuchs kept great records of who went, who stayed, who were prepared, who wasn't. And I'm this is just me thinking, but I'm thinking he also had daily reports of everything that's going on in his household. So he would know the names of all the women that he slept with. There was one that really delighted him, one he really liked, he called her back. So it was Esther's one night, her time to go in with the king. She accepted the advice of Haggai. She asked for nothing but what he suggested. So remember, he set her up. This was a setup. He knew exactly what he wanted her to do, how he wanted her to be, and he made suggestions for her of what she was to take. And so she obtained favor in the sight of not only him, but everyone who saw her. They could tell she was special. They could tell she was different. And there was something about her that stood out. And everyone wanted to make sure that she was blessed. Esther was taken to King Xerxes. In the 10th month, in the 7th year of his reign, that is when she went. The king's admiration of Esther, we talked about. The king loved Esther more than all the other women. And what it doesn't say is what order she came into the king. You don't know how many women he had before her. But however many he had, when she came, this was it. It's like, oh man, she is the one. I like this one. So she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the other virgins. He set the royal crown on her head and he made her the queen. The king made a great feast and even named the feast after her, the Feast of Esther. And all his officials and servants were there. Remember, Hadassah is her Hebrew name. Esther is her Persian name. So, you know, in Hebrew, even to this day, if you go into and deal with any Jewish, she is known throughout them as Hadassah. They don't call her Esther. She's Hadassah. but we know that her Persian name or her Gentile name is Esther. He proclaimed a holiday in the provinces. He gave gifts according to the generosity of the king. But then her uncle got involved. Mordecai discovers a plot. Esther keeps her secret. All the young women have been transferred to the second harem, and Mordecai sat within the king's gate. He had become now a palace official. It was known that she was his daughter, and so therefore she became the queen. He would not just remain just a normal everyday person. He now obtained favor as well and became one of the officials in the palace. Esther had not revealed her family and her people. She was still following Mordecai's directions, but yet now she is the queen. Mordecai was on duty at the king's gate this time, and two of the king's eunuchs, Bigthana and Teresh, they were guards at the door of the king's private quarters, but they became furious. We don't know why, but they sought and hatched a plan to lay hands on the king and to assassinate him. They wanted the king dead. And Mordecai finds out about this plot. So Mordecai tells Queen Esther. Esther turns around and informs the king in Mordecai's name, saying, Ahasuerus, king, my uncle, my father, Mordecai, has told me that there's a plot against you. He is to be remembered. He's letting you know that this is about to happen. So Mordecai's story was found to be true. And the king hanged both of the men on gallows. When we talk about gallows, we're not talking about the type of gallows that we think of today. And actually, they were impaled on spikes. And I can't even imagine that type of horror. But that's what happened to them. It was written in the books of the Chronicles in the presence of the king exactly what had happened. So are there any questions regarding what we went through over chapter number 2?
No.
Okay. All right, let's go on then. So let's talk about chapter number 3. This is Haman's conspiracy against the Jews, dealing in Esther, the 3rd chapter. We'll start in verses 1 through 6. After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes who were with him. And all the king's servants who were within the king's gate bowed and paid homage to Haman. For so the king had commanded concerning him, but Mordecai would not bow or pay homage. Then the king's servants who were within the king's gate said to Mordecai, "Why you transgress the king's command?" Now it happened when they spoke to him daily and he would not listen to them, that they told it to Haman to see whether Mordecai's words would stand. For Mordecai had told them that he was a Jew. And remember, he had told Esther, don't tell anybody who you are. But Mordecai told them who he was. So when Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay homage to him, Haman was filled with wrath. But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him of the people of Mordecai. Instead, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai. So let's go. This is dealing in the New Living Translation, Haman's promotion. Sometime later, King Xerxes promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, over all the other nobles, making him the most powerful official in the empire. So Haman, he's beside himself. He's now being promoted of all the princes who were with him. And you know, sometimes there are those that I know I have run into who seek high levels of authority. And it goes, you know, I'm not going to say it goes in their head. It's always been in their head because that's what they want to do, because they love to usurp authority over people. And Haman was one of these types of people who he reveled in now being made one of the highest princes of all, more than anybody else. He was the most powerful official in the king's empire. So the king's officials bowed down before Haman. All the king's officials would bow down before Haman to show him respect whenever he passed by. For so the king had commanded. The king made a command. When Haman walks by, everybody's supposed to bow. But Mordecai refused to bow down or show him respect. That's one of the things that you have to understand and realize about the Israelites. You know, it's in the word that they are not to bow down to anyone. You can go all the way back to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel, all of them who would not pay that type of homage and respect to the king. They wouldn't bow down. They wouldn't stop praying. They wouldn't. They took the consequences of their actions, but it showed that they stood by what they believed in, and God delivered them out of all of their problems and their troubles. So here's Mordecai as well. I'm not bowing down to anybody. I'm not bowing down. The king, you're not the king. You're just one of his officials. And I'm not bowing down to you, and I'm not showing you any respect. But you're going to find out why in just a minute. He didn't pay, they paid homage to the king. The king had commanded it, but Mordecai would not bow down. The king's servants questioned Mordecai's refusal to bow. So the palace officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, why are you disobeying the king's command? What's wrong with you? He spoke to him day after day, but still he refused to comply with the order. We're doing it. What makes you so special that you don't have to? You know, yeah, okay, the queen, but everybody got to bow. How come you're not doing it? So they spoke to Haman about this to see if he would tolerate Mordecai's conduct, since Mordecai had told them he was a Jew. Now think about Vashti. She made a refusal to do something that the king wanted her to do. She's banished. Now Haman's not the king, but he's one of the highest officials. So he feels kind of like King Lee. You know, what is this? You know, I don't know who he thinks he is. The king has commanded everybody's supposed to bow before me. But here's somebody who's not bowing. I got to do something about this. People are asking me. Matter of fact, all the other officials are looking at me, wanting to know what you're going to do about this. You know, you're greater than us. It's like the king is greater than us. And you got somebody that's disrespecting you and disobeying your order. What you going to do? Are you disrespecting the king? Every day they would question him. Mordecai did not care. He would not listen. So when they told Haman, they wanted to know what would he do. Not only is this guy just Mordecai, he's a Jew, different from us. To them, even lower than us. They had been in captivity. They were slaves. And you got a slave, an ex-slave who is refusing to bow down. Oh, this is a problem.
Yeah.
So Haman's anger against Mordecai, when Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow down or show him respect, he was filled with rage. He had learned of Mordecai's nationality, so he decided it was not enough to just lay hands on Mordecai alone. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all the Jews throughout the entire empire of Xerxes. I don't want just Mordecai dead. I want everybody dead. He was really ticked off that Mordecai would not bow or pay him homage. Then when he found out that Mordecai was a ex-slave, a Jew, oh, this is just like, the officials had told King Ahasuerus about Vashti. When all the women find out that the queen refuses, all the women of the land are going to start refusing their husbands. So Haman, when everybody finds out that this ex-slave, this Jew didn't bow down before you, all the Jews are going to turn out. So what does Haman do? Well, let's just kill them all. Let's just destroy them all. I don't want just Mordecai. Let's get rid of all of them, because we ain't going to have not one of them do anything. Throughout the whole kingdom, let's just kill them. But this is another reason why Mordecai did not bow down to Haman. Haman is an Agagite. Agagite, I'm sorry. Agag was an Amalekite king. He was king in the days of Saul, Israel's first king. Saul was commanded to utterly destroy Agag, and he didn't. Haman had to do it himself because Saul disobeyed. Haman, who would turn out to be a most insidious enemy of the Jews, would not have been around if King Saul would have obeyed. But Saul disobeyed, so now Haman was born and is able to oppose the Jews. And even worse, he's been promoted by the king. Everyone bowed down to Haman, and it was the king's command. Everyone, that is, except Mordecai. Mordecai refused to bow to this man. So knowing that Haman was in the bloodline of Agag, who he shouldn't even be alive, they were all enemies of the Jews. Saul should have done what God told him to do: kill everything, everyone. Samuel told him, you need to do it. But because Saul didn't do it, Saul lost his kingdom. And the descendants, there was some descendants that were not killed, that turned around, and now you have Haman. So Mordecai's like, look, I know who your bloodline is. I'm not bound down to you. Who you think you are? Your great, 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 great grandpappy's supposed to have been dead anyway. I'm not bound down to you. You don't mean nothing to me. So any questions regarding Haman? All right. Haman's plan for genocide. Let's go with Esther 3, verses 7 to 9. In the first month, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is, the lot, before Haman to determine the day and the month until it fell on the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. Then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, there's a certain people scattered and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from all other peoples, and they do not keep the king's law. Therefore, it is not fitting for the king to let them remain. If it pleases the king, let a decree be written that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who do the work, to bring it into the king's treasures. So here we go. The date that was chosen, in the month of April, during the 12th year of King Xerxes' reign, lots were cast in Haman's presence. The lots were called Purim, to determine the best day and month to take action. The day selected was March the 7th, nearly a year later. So it's all set. They're casting these lots. They know the time and that they're going to do this. And the lot that was, casting lots are actually like throwing die, however way they did that. But it was called in the Hebrew called the pur. We call it the Purim, to determine the day and the month to carry out his plot. And the month was selected was March. So Haman spoke to King Ahasuerus. And Haman approached King Xerxes and said, there is a certain race of people scattered throughout all the provinces of your empire who keep themselves separate from everyone else. Their laws are different from those of any other people, and they refuse to obey the laws of the king. So it is not in the king's interest to let them live. Now, I'm going to go back, because here you've got Haman more upset with Mordecai, but he's putting it before the king that all of them, everybody's refusing this. It doesn't say that. Mordecai is one who did not do. But they're deciding, let's just kill them all. A certain race of people scattered throughout all the provinces of the empire. The laws are different from all other peoples. They refused to obey the laws of the king. Only one did, that we read about. So the king should not let them live. I got some clout with you, man. Let's just get rid of all of them. Let a decree be written that they be destroyed. I will pay 10,000 talents of silver and deposit it into the royal treasury. This is what's going to be used for everybody who carries out this plot. Haman cast lots to determine when to carry out the destruction of the Jews. Somehow it falls on the 13th day of the 12th month. Haman goes to the king, tells the king that there's a group in his kingdom who doesn't obey the king's laws and asks permission to destroy him. King Ahasuerus rather mindlessly gives his permission. So you got this thing going on with Haman, who's got this plot on now. Well, I'm not just going to get one. We're going to get every Jew in the whole province, 120 provinces. We're going to have a party on this day, and everybody, we're going to kill them all. Any questions about verses 8 and 9?
Mm-hmm.
All right, number 3, the king makes a decree, Esther 3, 10 through 15. So the king took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. And the king said to Haman, the money and the people are given to you to do with them as seems good to you. And the king's scribes were called on the 13th day of the first month. The decree was written according to all that Haman commanded. To the king's satraps, to the governors who were over every province, to the officials of all people, to every province according to its script, to every people in their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus, it was written and sealed with the king's signet ring. Now, I kind of want to stop here. Remember, when the king makes a decree, not even the king can cancel it. Not only did he make this decree, he uses his ring to seal this, letting everybody know this is the king stating this. Since he made this decree, it must be carried out. So the letters were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, to annihilate all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their possessions. So in one day, all the Jews were to be killed on this one day, and whatever they had left, you got their stuff. Well, it doesn't matter if they had good stuff, bad stuff, all of their possessions are yours, and we're going to pay you. 10,000 talents have been put back as part of your reward for killing these people. A copy of the document was to be issued as law in every province, being published for all people, that they should be ready for that day. Get ready. Couriers went out, hastened to the king's command, and the decree was proclaimed in Shushan, the citadel. So the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Shushan was perplexed. Remember, it was only Mordecai who refused. So the whole city was kind of like, what in the world is this? What's going on? The only ones who knew that Haman was not bowing down was part of the king's officials. It wasn't the whole city. So they were kind of like wondering, why is this decree is being put out? And everyone was kind of like, this is kind of crazy. And I can imagine, you know, think about you and your neighborhood. We all have and live in different neighborhoods. Some of our neighborhoods are very diverse, colors, ethnicities, beliefs, but we can still live together, be friendly with one another. But just think if a law went out to where one specific group of people were going to be annihilated, and you were friends with them, you were acquaintances with them, but now they're going to be dead, and you don't know why. That's kind of messed up. Your children probably grew up with their children. You know, y'all played together, even if you may have had different ways of seeing things and doing things, you know, you still knew one another. It could be that one group worked for the other group. And now all of a sudden, an entire race of people is being judged to be annihilated. But you don't know why. You just know here's a law being put out on this one day, they all gonna die. I don't know about you, but I'd be kind of like really kind of jacked up. And then kind of wondering, okay, if they're gonna get rid of them, what about me? I'm their friend. They're gonna get them, maybe they may come and get me. You never know. So the king agrees with Haman. King agreed, confirming his decision by removing his signet ring from his finger and giving it to Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. King said, the money and the people are both yours to do with as you see fit. Do your thing. He gives his ring to Haman. Haman is an enemy, not just of Mordecai, but of all the Jews. You got money and you got people. They're in your charge, Haman. Do what you want to do. It's all on you. The king's scribes were summoned. So on April the 17th, the king's secretaries were summoned. The decree was written exactly as Haman dictated. It was sent to the king's highest officers, the governors of the respective provinces, the nobles of each province in their own scripts and languages. The decree was written in the name of King Xerxes and sealed with the king's signet ring, meaning, hey, it's so let it be written, so let it be done. 13th day of the month is when it was done. The decree was written. Every governor, every official, every province received this summons. Every people, no matter what language you spoke, it was written in your language so you could understand this is exactly what's to happen. And written in the name of the king, meaning the king said it, it's to be done. Why? because the king's signet ring has been placed and sealed. So you know this is a true decree, cannot be changed. The letters were sent, dispatches were sent by swift messengers to all the provinces of the empire, giving the order that all Jews, young and old, including women and children, must be killed, slaughtered, and annihilated all in one day. This was scheduled to happen on March 7th of the next year. The property of the Jews would be given to those who killed them. So you had a whole year from this time. Know that on this one day, all the Jews are going to die. Destroy, kill, annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women and children. One day. It's crazy. And everything and anything that they owned, whoever killed them, their stuff is yours. And the decree was made a law. It wasn't just stated, it's now a law. A copy of the decree was to be issued as a law in every province and proclaimed to all peoples so that they would be ready to do their duty on the appointed day. At the king's command, the decree went out by swift messengers. It was also proclaimed in the fortress of Susa. And the king and Haman sat down to drink. Oh, it's party time again. But the city of Susa fell into confusion. Nobody could understand why this was being done. But if the king said it, the decree went out, messengers very quickly distributed this out. The whole fortress of Susa knew it. And the king and Haman, hey, let's just, now that we know this is going to happen, let's just relax. You and I don't have to do nothing. I got paid assassins. It's going to go out here and kill all the Jews, and all their stuff can be taken. Haman writes up an edict declaring that all Jews throughout Persia, Judah too, must be destroyed on the 13th day of the 12th month. The action is pure sorrow all across the kingdom. There was confusion in the capital city of Susa. Any questions so far? Okay.
No.
So this is what has happened up until this point. It's crazy that one person's refusal caused an entire race of people to be sought for annihilation because one man was disrespected. Goes to let you know just what happens when people become a little obsessed with themselves and their power and their authority, what they do and what they want to do to people who do not show them the honor and the respect that they believe they deserve. And it happens even today. I'm no longer in the working community. Thank you, Jesus. I'm retired from that. But I can remember having bosses who were just obsessed with their authority.
Yes.
And wanted to make sure that you paid them the greatest of respect. They could treat you any way they wanted to, but you had to give them the greatest and highest of respect. And if they made your life a living hell.
Yes, they did.
I'm telling you, that's what we see. And so here, this whole thing wasn't just that he wanted to get back at one person because he was a Jew. Let's just get rid of all of them. King, you know, hey, you went through this similar thing with the queen. You got rid of her. And be it known that if everybody knows or thought that you didn't do anything about it, all the women and all the wives of all the officials, they're going to do this very same thing. And we can't have that. So Haman, here's this ex-slave Jew who's, in a sense, doing the same thing that Esther did. And if you let him get away with it, all the Jews are going to do this very same thing.
Right.
So let's just get rid of all of them. We're not going to replace them. We don't need them. Let's just kill them. And that was the plot that Haman had made. So let's do some quick questions. What are the main points of this chapter? Well, we dealt with Haman's conspiracy against the Jews, Haman's plan for genocide. The king makes a decree. Those were the three main points. When Haman was promoted, what did all the officials do when they saw him?
They bowed down.
They bowed down and they gave him homage. Oh, great Haman. Right, like he really deserved that.
Right.
Who would not bow down and pay homage to Haman?
Mordecai.
Mordecai. Ex-slave, Jew. What was Haman's response to Mordecai's refusal to bow?
He hated him.
He was ticked off. He was filled with rage. What did Haman plan to do once he discovered that Mordecai was a Jew?
He wanted to kill them all.
Destroy all the Jews, not just Mordecai. Let's get them all. Throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, what date was chosen for the destruction of the Jews? Anybody remember?
The 13th
The
day
month
of the 12th month.
of April. In the 12th year of King Ahasuerus' reign. It was actually the month of March. They cast the pur in April.
December, in the 12th.
Oh, okay.
Okay. How was the date chosen? Lots were cast in
They
Haman's
threw dice.
presence, and the lots were called Purim. How much money did Haman give to have the Jews killed?
10,000 talents.
10,000 talents of silver. In today's money, that's probably a few million. Yeah, a few million. That's a lot of money. Because you got to realize, this is going out through all the provinces, 120 of them. So that's a lot of money. You got to spread around to all the people that's going to be doing all this killing. So he put it in the bank, deposited it in the royal treasury, so it could be distributed. What was the king's response to Haman's plan?
You're in charge.
He was okay.
Yeah.
He agreed with the plan.
Yeah.
He gave a signet ring to Haman and told him, do with them as you see fit. What was written in the letters that were sent to all the king's provinces? Well, the first one's destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women. Don't let nothing live. Matter of fact, this was the same thing that was told to Saul regarding Agag. Kill everything. Young, old, children, women, kill them all. All the animals, kill everything. So Haman just turns around and does this very same thing. So I'll make sure that the same word that was spoken for Saul over Agag was spoken over Mordecai and all the Jews. Annihilate them on a single day. You got one day, and we're not going to spread this out over a week, over a month. We want all this done in one day. So from sun up to sundown, find a Jew, kill him. You all know who they are. You know where they live. They're part of your community. You know all about them. Kill them. We're going to give you some money, and you get to take their stuff. March the
When the
7th.
Jewish people had known about it.
Everybody found out about it. They didn't know why, but when the decree goes out, everybody knows. It's foretold. The king got a decree over everything and everyone. The Jews' property would be given to those who killed them. So yeah, the Jews knew, the Persians knew, Africans knew.
That's like a bounty.
It's like a bounty. Don't
Yeah.
matter.
You may not have been a killer, but you might have been thinking about catching you a Jew back then. At that
That's
moment.
right. That's right. And if you were in bad straits and didn't have a lot of money or didn't have a lot of stuff, and you knew a Jewish person who did, you're gonna get paid and you get to take their stuff.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's on now. It's open. What is that? What's the movies that are out? We have one day to just
Purge.
purge. That's what.
Yeah.
Here we go. This was the first purge. You have one day that you can kill all the Jews and take all their stuff. It's a purge. There we go. So the next lesson we're going to go into is next week we're going to deal in chapter 4.